Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Last month we made a video showing some strange things found in games and the feedback was incredible. First of all, I want to thank everyone who watched it. I'm very happy that you enjoy it. So what are we going to do today? How about we talk about more games with strange things in them? The more I research, the more I realize that there are so many cases of this that you probably wouldn't even imagine, and I hope that I don't miss on any information this time. Anyways, let's jump right into it.
Ready, rumble! Excellent! Digimon!
Digimon Rumble Arena 2 is a game released by Bandai for PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox. It is a sequel to 2001's Digimon Rumble Arena and has a similar style of gameplay as Super Smash Bros. Melee. Digimon was a famous cartoon in the 2000s, especially in my home country, Brazil, where for a long time there was almost a fanboy war to decide which was better, Digimon or Pokemon. Yes, I think one of them won, but I won't say which one to avoid upsetting anyone here. Anyways, it was a relatively successful game, but if the game is here, you probably know why. Inside the game files was something that no one expected. Once again, someone, and I don't know why, but there's always someone doing this, put the game disc in their computer thinking, what can I find here? In this case, they would find a file called fil.fil. So, when they changed its extension to .zip, they discovered that the original file was actually zipped and contained a complete build of the game from March 2003, over a year before the game release. And the most interesting thing is that it was very easy to turn it into a disk image and play it. As it is an old beta build, there are some differences compared to the final game. For example, the start screen and the character selection are completely different and features a lot of placeholder images. There is also an active debug menu to make it easier to jump between stages and change characters on fly. One interesting thing to notice is that on the character select screen you can see some Digimons that weren't included in the final version. For example, Armadillomon and Hawkmon were planned to be part of the game but were cut at the last minute. It's pretty cool to see this unfinished version of the game, but it's also strange to think about why this even exists on the game files. Even now, we don't really have an official understanding of why this happened. Anyways, huge thanks to the user who sent me this information in my last video.
Come on! Round one! Get ready! Fight!
Bloody Roar 4 is a fighting game developed by Hudson Soft in 2003 and released for the PlayStation 2. At the time, it was not very well received because it had many bugs, some elements of the game seemed unfinished, and its gameplay was kinda unbalanced. Because of this, Bloody Roar 4 holds a rating of only 59 on Metacritic. One interesting thing about its development is that it was created using the Renderware engine, which was developed by Criterion and was one of the most popular engines of the 6th generation of consoles. This engine was behind huge successes such as the entire Grand Theft Auto series from Rockstar Games released for that generation and the Burnout series games. Why is this information so important? Well, because we can find something interesting if dig in the game files. Inside the files was a folder called Dummy. There were a few files with a DMM extension inside. What most people didn't realize was that by changing the file extension to .zip and unzipping them, each one became the original Renderware SDK for PS2 installer. It was literally the game engine installer. In our previous video, we discussed the reason for using padding files. In games, it was necessary to fill all the space on the physical media of a game, but at the same time, they were useful for optimizing the placement of game data on physical disks for faster loading by pushing data to the outer edge. But why use a game engine for that is really strange, right? In the game's case, it's also interesting to note that even in beta versions, you can find this SDK as documented in Hidden Palace. In older versions, there could be up to 5 installers of the same SDK. So, what can you do with this installer? Well, not much. I installed it on my computer as I'm showing now, but it didn't load anything. Maybe it's missing some file, but I really don't know. Being honest, the most interesting thing that happened was that it also has a complete documentation on how to install and operate the game engine in a PDF file. Anyways, I want to say huge thanks to the user who sent me this information in my last video. Kung Fu Panda is an awesome movie starring Jack Black. It was very successful practically all over the world, so it's obvious that there would be a game based on it, since at that time there were so many licensed games based on movies, especially animated films. The game was released in June 2008 for practically every existing console, from the 6th generation, 7th generation to portable ones. But we'll talk about its 6th generation version, specifically the PS2 game. And why is this version special? Well, it's not exactly because of the game itself, because even by critics' standards, it was a very mediocre game, but it's another case of the use of padding files on the disc. Yeah, it was discovered in a very specific way. I must say that the Swedish version of the game for PS2 had a beta build of the Nintendo Wii version dated December 2007, that is 6 months before the game was officially released. You heard right, not only is there a beta version of the game, something we've seen in other cases, but it's a beta version for another console. Imagine that, you buy a PS2 game, and you can run the same game on a PS2 and a Nintendo Wii, all on the same disc. Well, of course, it's not that simple. The build was found inside a file called dummy.dat, and in order to run the build, you need to convert the file to a zip extension. After that, it still needed to be converted to run via an emulator. Let's talk about some of the differences. The first thing is that this version strangely loads directly into the Lake of Tears stage, which is odd because that stage only occurs in the middle of the game. Another interesting thing about this version is the amount of leftover content it has from the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions. In the prototype, many command prompts and icons in the user interface still use the Xbox 360 buttons, instead of the specific Wii Remote icons that appear in the final version. In addition, it also has a debug menu already known from these beta versions, allowing you to choose between game stages and some types of content manipulation, such as giving the character infinite life. So it's a very interesting discovery, but unfortunately we'll probably never know why it's there. Project Gotham Racing was a franchise that became very popular on the original Xbox and later on the Xbox 360. With 4 games released in the main series, it was a critical success from the very first game. One of the things that was critically acclaimed was their graphics, which were revolutionary for the time, especially considering that the first game was released in 2001. Anyway, let's talk about the second game in the franchise. Project Gotham Racing 2 was developed by Bizarre Creations and published by Microsoft Game Studios in 2003 for the original Xbox. What if I told you that a totally different franchise was created because of a mini-game found within this game? Let's talk about the game franchise called Geometry Wars, which had its first unofficial game here. To start, how was this minigame accessed within the game? Well, in the garage where you could see all your cars, there was a hidden arcade that you could access using the free camera mode. So, by clicking on it, the game would load. The game was a multi-directional shooter, similar to the ones found in the Atari, in which the goal was to survive as long as possible while attacking all the enemies that appeared. The idea of the game is that you can move the ship in all possible directions using the left thumbstick and shoot in any direction using the right thumbstick. One of the curiosities of this Easter egg is that the team faced challenges during development involving the prototype controllers for the first Xbox. They were often described as inconsistent or of poor technical quality, which made it difficult to accurately implement the vehicle steering mechanics. To isolate the hardware variables and ensure that the software was working correctly, Bizarre Creations developed an extremely basic test application to visualize the controller inputs through a simple geometric shape object on a 2-dimensional grid. However, thanks to a developer named Steven Cakebrad, who was also primarily responsible for the testing tool, what would later become Geometry Wars was created when he used his free time at the studio to improve the original code, adding enemies with specific behavior patterns and independent shooting mechanics. I'd like to thank another user who sent me this information in my last video. Let's talk about a compilation of Sega titles, released for the Sega Dreamcast. Sega Smashback Volume 1 is infamous, not for the quality it have, but for so many bad decisions and strange things found. This is the third compilation. The first two were released for PC. And why is so infamous? Well, the poor quality of emulation and sound effects helped a lot with this fame. The only thing I will show is this image. Yeah, on the title screen of Sonic the Hedgehog, there is a famous graphical glitch caused by inaccurate emulation. This bug creates an illusion that Sonic has a deformed belly or a mutant arm, something that was a common error in amateur emulators at the time, but surprising isn't an official Sega product. Anyways, this game, believe or not, have a lot of curiosities and hidden things found. One of the first curiosities is that this game has a hidden game that can be accessed if you put the disc in a computer. Yes, this time was an official one. The game in question was Sega Swirl, a puzzle minigame that was usually found in game demos and which is also one of the games in the compilation. When the Dreamcast game was placed on a computer, the installer for this minigame can be loaded and be installed directly on the PC. Pretty cool, right? But the biggest mystery is related to the infamous Uncle Sonic. We don't have 100% sure who is, but he is credited in one of the game files. Inside the game files you can find a file called echelon.txt, and here that the things start becoming strange. The file was written by the lead programmer of the compilation, Gary Lakeshall, and was a manual for the hacking group called Echelon, which dominated the Dreamcast scene at the time. This file explained how the emulator worked. It detailed that .sk files were just renamed Genesis ROMs and provided technical parameters so that hackers could run virtually any game on this internal emulator. The message ended with the phrase, "Sony just doesn't get it," and asked him to send regards to Uncle Sonic. Some people think this Uncle Sonic might be Yuji Naka, the guy who created Sonic. So this was kind of a phrase that paid respect to the franchise's creator while also joking about Sony. Anyway, it was weird to see this in the files, but it was a huge help to the emulation scene at the time. With the information provided, the Echelon group was able to create a side loader for the game, which let you load any ROM in this Sega's emulator. It's honestly mind-blowing to see how many things can be found in video games, whether it's a beta version for a completely different console, an entire game engine installer, or hidden games. Anyway, I want to say a massive thank you again to all of you who shared your thoughts in the comments of the last video. And again, I want to know from you guys, have you ever found something strange or a hidden game inside one of your favorite titles? Let me know in the comments. That's it. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. We will always have new interesting videos to come, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.